December 19th, 1944, 06:23 hours. The forests outside Neuville, Belgium. Unteroffizier Klaus Wendel gripped a frozen pencil with his gloved hand, struggling to write in his small notebook. Each breath turned into mist inside the cramped turret of his Panther tank. His words were brief but heavy. The Americans have a new hunter. We hear them but never see them. By the time our turret turns, they are gone. Yesterday, 3 of our Tigers were destroyed. Peering through his commander's cupola into the dark Ardennes woods, Wendel saw nothing but silence. Beyond the tree line, the 75th Tank Destroyer Battalion was already maneuvering their M18 Hellcats into hidden positions. What he could not know was that in just 17 minutes, his entire belief in German armored superiority would be overturned by an American machine that broke every convention the Wehrmacht had drilled into its tank forces over 5 years of war. The Panther's 75mm high-velocity gun could pierce almost any American tank at 2,000 meters. Its thick-sloped armor could shrug off most Allied fire. It was considered the crown jewel of German engineering, heavy, powerful, and methodically designed for dominance. Yet, within just 3 minutes of combat, Wendel would see multiple German tanks destroyed by opponents moving faster than German armor could even travel on paved highways. The Battle of the Bulge was on its 4th day, and across the snow-covered forests of Belgium and Luxembourg, German crews were coming face to face with a grim truth. The Americans had unleashed a machine that fought unlike any tank they had ever encountered. It wasn't stronger, it wasn't thicker armored, it was simply faster beyond anything they thought possible in armored warfare. The origins of the M18 Hellcat stretched back to December 1941, as the United States entered the war. While Germany advanced its designs by building heavier and more powerful tanks, 45-ton Panthers and 69 8-ton King Tigers, American engineers at General Motors went in the opposite direction. They developed a vehicle based not on weight and armor but on speed and firepower. The result would terrify German crews 3 years later. The Tank Destroyer branch, created under General Leslie McNair's order on November 21, 1941, was founded on a single principle, outlined in Field Manual FM-18-5, seek, strike, and destroy. Speed and firepower mattered more than armor protection. The M18, originally developed under the name T-70, would embody this doctrine to an extreme German designers considered reckless. In January 1942, Buick Motor Division in Flint, Michigan, not the Grand Blanc Sherman plant as sometimes misreported, received the contract. Chief Engineer Joseph Roberts was tasked with what seemed impossible. Build a vehicle under 20 tons, give it a 76mm high-velocity gun, keep its profile low for concealment, and somehow make it reach speeds above 50 mph. The only way forward was to sacrifice armor. The thickest plate on the Hellcat was just 25, 4mm at the turret front with the hull front only 12, 7 whine, enough to stop heavy machine gun fire, but completely vulnerable to every German tank gun. A direct hit from an 88mm round would go straight through both sides, but what the Hellcat lacked in protection, it made up for in mobility. It became the fastest fully tracked combat vehicle of the entire Second World War. The first Hellcats arrived in Europe in early 1944. They were first tested in combat by the 894th Tank Destroyer Battalion in Italy. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion was the first in Northern Europe to get them, landing at Utah Beach on July 13, 1944. It was during the breakout from Normandy that German crews began reporting strange, unnerving encounters. On July 29, 1944, near Coutances, France, German heavy tank battalions filed reports of American vehicles that appeared, fired, and then vanished before return fire was possible. The after-action records described U.S. vehicles moving as fast as 80 km/h across open ground, with entire firefights beginning and ending in less than 180 seconds. The numbers told the story clearly. A Panther tank's turret needed 60 seconds for one full rotation. Its maximum road speed was 34 mph, only 15 mph across country. In comparison, the M18 Hellcat could accelerate from 0 to 30 mph in just 7 seconds, reach 55 mph on roads with its governor, or 60 mph with it removed, and still sustain 26 mph over rough terrain. That meant in the 3 minutes it took a German crew to spot, traverse, aim, and fire, the Hellcat could have already shifted position by nearly a mile and a half. The fear was justified. The Hellcat's 76 mm M1A2 gun, with standard M62 APC-BC ammunition, could not punch through the Panther's front armor, but its sides, only 40 mm thick, were easy targets even at 1,500 meters. With the rare M93 HVAP tungsten rounds, only 1 or 2 issued per crew each month, penetration jumped to 157 or at 500 yards. At a muzzle velocity of 2,600 feet per second, the projectile often struck before German crews even heard the firing report. German doctrine stressed patience, careful aiming, and firing from prepared positions. The Panther and Tiger were optimized for this style. Thick armor, devastating guns, but slow and deliberate. The Hellcat turned this doctrine upside down. American crews trained at Camp Hood, Texas, established on 158,706 acres specifically for tank destroyer tactics, were taught never to stay still for more than 30 seconds after firing. Speed is life was their mantra. Where German crews aimed for one perfect crushing shot, U.S. doctrine emphasized quick engagement and immediate relocation, the shoot and scoot method. Between July 1943 and October 1944, Buick's Flint plant completed 2,507 M18 Hellcats, far fewer than the planned 8,986. This included 6 pilot models, an initial order of 1,000 and a final order of 1,507. At its peak, production reached 267 units in November 1943. By comparison, German Panther production struggled to reach even 90 units a month by late 1944. Every German loss hurt. While U.S. factories could replace Hellcats far faster, the M18 used the Wright R-975 radial engine, originally developed for aircraft. Early production, serial numbers 11350, carried the R-975C1, producing 350 horsepower. Later models, serials 13512507, were upgraded in March 1944 with the supercharged R-975C4 engine, delivering 400 horsepower. Weighing just 7 to 20 tons depending on configuration, the Hellcat had a remarkable power-to-weight ratio of 20 to 22. 5 horsepower per ton. The Panther at 45 tons managed only 15 horsepower per ton. Its hydromatic automatic transmission and torque converter allowed drivers to maneuver at high speed without losing momentum, a huge advantage over German vehicles that demanded constant clutching and gear shifting. Ground pressure was another hidden strength. At just 5 psi, the Hellcat could cross mud and snow where the Tiger at 2 psi often bogged down. The heavier 69-ton King Tiger was even worse. The Hellcat's light footprint made it not only faster, but also more mobile in the harsh winter terrain of Europe. The massive 88-ton Tiger II tanks represented the peak of German armored might. Yet during the breakout from Normandy in August 1944, the Americans would showcase a radically different approach to tank warfare. Operation Cobra, launched on July 28, 1944, provided the first large-scale test of M18 Hellcat doctrine. The 603rd Tank Destroyer Battalion, which had received its M18s in October 1943 and landed at Utah Beach on July 21, 2022, spearheaded the sweep through Brittany. They were soon joined by the 704th and 705th Battalions, also equipped with Hellcats who drove forward with unprecedented speed. Instead of cautious advances and prolonged firefights, M18 crews carried out what became known as rapid flanking maneuvers, using mobility to strike from unexpected angles before German turrets could traverse to fire back. The Battle of Arracourt, fought from September 18 to 29, 1944 near the Nancy bridgehead across the Moselle River, offered one of the clearest demonstrations of the Hellcat's value. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion, attached to the 4th Armored Division's Combat Command A, faced off against the German 113th Panzer Brigade. The odds should have favored the defenders. But on September 19th, in heavy morning fog with visibility reduced to just 30 feet, Lieutenant Edwin Leiper's platoon struck first. In the opening 5 minutes, his Hellcats knocked out 5 German tanks while losing only one of their own. The fighting raged on. 10 more German tanks fell in exchange for 2 additional. M18's Captain Tom Evans earned the Distinguished Service Cross after personally operating the gun of a disabled Hellcat to destroy approaching enemy armor. When the smoke cleared, the tally at Arracourt was stunning. 39 German tanks destroyed at the cost of 4 M18s destroyed and 3 damaged. The 5-6-to-1 kill ratio proved the tank destroyer doctrine worked when properly executed, but it was during the Battle of the Bulge in December 1944 that the M18 Hellcat earned its legendary reputation. The 705th Tank Destroyer Battalion, described by General A.D. Bruce as the best-trained tank destroyer unit in the Army, rushed to Bastogne to support the 101st Airborne Division. Between December 19th and 20th, M18s from both the 609th and 705th Battalions engaged elements of the German 2nd Panzer Division near Noville. The 609th's Lieutenant David K. Hagen led a platoon of 4 Hellcats with remarkable success. In one fight, a single Hellcat destroyed 7 enemy tanks while another knocked out 5 more. With just one M18 lost, they accounted for 14 German tanks in total. Reinforcements from the 705th, under Lieutenant Colonel Clifford D. Templeton, arrived later on December 19th with around 12 more Hellcats. Together, the combined force helped destroy at least 30 German tanks over the next 2 days, inflicting 600 to 1,000 casualties and holding up the German advance for a critical 48 hours. For its actions at Bastogne from December 18th to 27th, 1944, the 705th would later receive the Presidential Unit Citation. On Christmas Day alone, they destroyed 27 German tanks while losing 6 M18s, fighting against the 15th Panzer Grenadier Division. Overall, during the siege, the battalion destroyed around 40 tanks while losing 6 Hellcats, an incredible 6-7-to-1 kill ratio. The Hellcats' advantages were magnified under the harsh conditions of the Ardennes. German heavy tanks bogged down in mud and snow, while the M18's lighter frame and low ground pressure kept it mobile. Heavy fog grounded Allied air power and limited visibility to under 100 meters, stripping German armor of its long-range firepower advantage. These conditions played directly into the strengths of Hellcat crews, who had trained in close-range ambush tactics at Camp Hood's battle conditioning course. Strategic mobility was another overlooked asset. While the Tiger II required a Class 70 bridge, rare in Europe, the M18 could cross Class 24 bridges, the same strength needed for a loaded truck. This allowed Hellcats to move rapidly across rivers and temporary structures built by U.S. engineers, while German heavy armor was often stranded searching for crossings strong enough to hold their weight. Production numbers told the larger story. Between July 1943 and October 1944, U.S. factories produced 2,507 M18 Hellcats. In comparison, Germany built roughly 6,000 Panthers, 492 Tiger IIs, and 1,347 Tiger Is. For every Panther produced, the United States built the equivalent of 8 tanks or tank destroyers. In addition to Hellcats, American output included 49,234 M4 Shermans, 23 and 24 M10 tank destroyers, 273 M36s, plus 88 M410 other armored vehicles. German crews not only faced superior tactics but overwhelming numbers. By late 1944, German training quality had collapsed. Many replacement tank crews received barely 2 weeks of instruction before being sent to the front. In contrast, Hellcat crews trained extensively at Camp Hood, later renamed Fort Hood, Texas. The Tank Destroyer School offered a 17-week program focused on speed, mobility, and battlefield initiative. At its peak, under the command of Lieutenant Colonel, later Brigadier General Andrew D. Bruce, the facility could train 100,000 soldiers at once. With 28 battalions and 8 groups in constant preparation, crews drilled in rapid fire and relocation, mastering high-speed gunnery and tactical coordination until it became instinct. Camp Hood also pioneered the U.S. Army's first live-fire combat simulation, the Battle Conditioning Course, originally known as the Tank Hunting Course. Trainees spent a full week in simulated battle, with live ammunition fired overhead, conditioning them for the shock of real combat. By the end of 1944, American tank destroyer doctrine had matured into a proven method. The original FM-18-5 manual, published in June 1942, declared, "There is but one objective of tank destroyer units, the destruction of hostile tanks." General Bruce later explained the core concepts. Seek meant aggressive reconnaissance, strike meant destroying through gunfire, and destroy meant eliminating the enemy with superior maneuver. Combat experience refined these lessons. North Africa had shown that reckless frontal charges were suicidal. Instead, deception, stealth, and aggressive mobility became the heart of tank destroyer tactics. M18 crews developed wolf pack methods, 3 or 4 Hellcats striking together, coordinating by radio to create overlapping fire while constantly staying on the move. The results spoke for themselves. According to the Army Historical Foundation, M18 Hellcats accounted for 526 confirmed enemy armored kills, 498 in Europe, 17 in Italy, and 11 in the Pacific. In the European theater, 216 M18s were lost to enemy fire, giving a kill-to-loss ratio of 2, 4-1 overall, and 2, 3-1 in Europe specifically, the best record of any American tank or tank destroyer of the war. Individual battalions often exceeded this average. The 603rd destroyed over 90 enemy armored vehicles. The 704th matched those numbers, with Arracourt alone accounting for 39 kills. The 705th's actions at Bastogne, 40 kills for 6 losses, became iconic. The 601st Tank Destroyer Battalion recorded the most impressive result of all, with a kill ratio nearing 23-1. The M18 Hellcat had proven that speed and maneuver could overcome weight and armor. By war's end, it stood as one of the most effective armored vehicles ever fielded by the U.S. Army. Loss records showed that 40 to 50% of M18 Hellcat losses came from German tanks and anti-tank guns taking advantage of its light armor. Another 25 to 35% were caused by mechanical issues, while the rest were due to infantry weapons, artillery fire, and mines. The contrast between German and American tank design becomes clear when looking at their specifications. The Panther weighed 8 to 45 tons with 80mm frontal armor sloped at 55 to grain, giving an effective thickness of about 140mm. The Tiger I weighed 57 tons with 100mm of vertical frontal armor. The Tiger II or King Tiger reached 8 tons with 150mm sloped frontal armor and 180mm turret armor. In comparison, the M18 Hellcat weighed only 7 to 20 tons and carried armor ranging from just 7mm on the hull to 4mm on the turret front, thinner than some German armored cars. This thin protection gave it speed, which became its greatest defense. At 500 mm, a Hellcat moving across a Tiger's line of fire at 40 mph would pass in just 4.5 seconds, faster than most German gunners could track with manual traverse after their hydraulic systems failed, something that often happened in combat. Mechanical reliability also set the M18 apart. Its Wright R-975 radial engine, adapted from proven aircraft design, started instantly even in freezing weather. By contrast, German diesel engines needed careful warm-up. Panther transmissions, though advanced, were fragile and plagued by final drive breakdowns. The Tiger II was so complicated that more were lost to mechanical failures than to enemy fire. The M18's simple layout and use of standard automotive parts meant crews could keep them running with fewer problems. Logistics gave the Hellcat another huge advantage. American supply lines, supported by systems like the Red Ball Express, kept fuel and spare parts flowing. German tanks often stood idle for lack of supplies. By late 1944, German fuel shortages had become critical. The Ardennes Offensive, Operation Watch on the Rhine, was launched partly to capture Allied fuel depots since their own reserves were running out. This forced German armor into static positions, exactly the kind of fight where the fast Hellcat had the upper hand. Every M18 carried working radios and intercom systems, usually the SCR-508 or SCR-528 sets. These allowed Hellcat crews to coordinate movements and strike together. German tanks often had unreliable or broken communications, and some units resorted to signal flags or prearranged plans. This left them unable to adapt quickly in battle, while Hellcat platoons could coordinate flanking moves in real time. 4 Hellcats attacking from different angles acted like one machine, while German tanks fought in isolation. Before its famous role in Northwest Europe, the Hellcat had already shown its potential in Italy. In May 1944, during the breakout from Anzio, the 894th Tank Destroyer Battalion faced the German Panzer Division. The hilly terrain, with vineyards and stone walls, should have slowed the M18. Instead, its speed gave the illusion of being everywhere at once. The Hellcats could climb 30-degree slopes faster than German tanks could move on flat ground, leaving a strong psychological effect. German high command largely ignored these warnings, focused instead on the Eastern Front. The winter of 1944-45 highlighted the Hellcat's strengths even more. With wide tracks and low weight producing just 5 psi ground pressure, It moved easily through snow where heavier German vehicles became stuck. During the Battle of the Bulge, M18 crews used this mobility to outmaneuver bogged-down Tigers and Panthers, even appearing behind enemy lines in areas thought unreachable by tanks. This mobility was a key factor in defending Bastogne. German countermeasures proved ineffective. Manuals instructed tank crews to use smoke when Hellcats appeared, essentially blinding themselves. Crews welded spare track links to armor, but these did little against 76mm rounds. Ambushes with hidden anti-tank guns sometimes worked, but not reliably. The Hellcats' mix of speed, firepower, and flexibility forced German commanders to delay or avoid committing armor without reconnaissance, costing them initiative and momentum. In March 1945 at Remagen, M18s of the 656th Tank Destroyer Battalion crossed the damaged Ludendorff Bridge, which heavier tanks couldn't use. They destroyed 11 German tanks, including 2 King Tigers, which lacked room to maneuver. The lightweight design that let the Hellcat use truck bridges gave it strategic reach German heavy tanks couldn't match. In April 1945, during the Ruhr Pocket, the 893rd Tank Destroyer Battalion showed the M18's full potential. Racing down cleared autobahns at nearly 60 mph, they cut deep into German positions before commanders realized their lines had been breached. These operations proved that speed itself could be a weapon. German defenses designed for frontal attacks by heavy tanks were useless against vehicles that bypassed them at highway speed. Post-war studies confirmed both the Hellcat's strengths and its limits. The 76mm gun with standard M62 APC-BC rounds could penetrate only 93mm of armor at 500 yards, not enough to pierce the front of Panthers or Tigers. High-velocity HV-AP rounds could do the job, but they were rare. This forced crews to rely on flanking attacks, where the M18's mobility gave them a chance to succeed. Despite these limitations, the record is clear. M18 Hellcats scored 526 confirmed kills against 216 losses, the best kill-to-loss ratio of any American armored vehicle in the war. Its success did not come from heavy armor or overwhelming firepower, but from speed, surprise, and well-trained crews. The M18 Hellcat was more than just a tank destroyer. It represented a new way of thinking about armored warfare. While Germany built tanks as heavy fortresses for breakthrough battles, the United States built the Hellcat as a fast, flexible weapon, proving that mobility itself could win the fight. The tank destroyer was built for one role, the pure hunter. The motto of the U.S. Tank Destroyer Force, seek, strike, and destroy, proved accurate. By the end of World War II, American tank destroyer battalions had claimed over 11,000 enemy vehicles destroyed, with M18 Hellcat units recording the highest kill ratios of all. From the start, doctrine made it clear that tank destroyers were not tanks and should never be used like them. Their role was to strike from ambush, kill, and then vanish. The Hellcat not only succeeded in this tactical role, but also had wider strategic effects. German armored reserves, instead of being massed for big counterattacks, were often kept back to guard against sudden raids. Just the presence of Hellcats in a sector was enough to freeze German movements for hours, while commanders tried to confirm where they were. During the Ardennes offensive, German radio traffic revealed commanders refusing to commit reserves until they had proof that no Hellcats were nearby. Those delays wasted hours. Blunting an offensive meant to split Allied forces. In many cases, the momentum of German attacks collapsed because they feared vehicles that weighed less than half of a Panther. Production numbers tell the same story. The U.S. built 507 Hellcats in total. In contrast, Germany spent 3 years building 6,000 Panthers, constantly struggling with quality problems and shortages of parts. Buick produced every Hellcat in just 15 months using standard parts and streamlined methods. German engineers who studied captured Hellcats described them as crude, rough welds, tool marks still on the armor, interiors that seemed carelessly arranged. Yet this crude machine destroyed some of Germany's most advanced tanks. America built tools for war, while Germany built monuments of engineering that often failed in practice. Behind these statistics was the human cost. By 1945, many German tank crews were teenagers, sent into battle in Panthers and Tigers that represented the height of German design. Yet those tanks burned just as easily when caught in a Hellcat ambush. For American crews, survival was not guaranteed either. The M18's light armor meant that when it was hit, losses could be catastrophic. But the open-topped turret improved survival rates. over 80% for Hellcat crews compared to only 35% for crews of German heavy tanks. The influence of the Hellcat did not end in 1945. Militaries around the world studied its record and learned that speed and mobility could sometimes matter more than armor. Modern shoot-and-scoot tactics, firing and then quickly relocating, trace directly back to how the M18 was used in Europe. At Fort Moore, once known as Fort Benning, a restored Hellcat stands at the entrance to the U.S. Armor School. Its plaque recognizes it as the fastest armored fighting vehicle of the Second World War, proof that speed and American mass production could beat even the most advanced enemy tanks. The M18's technical record was impressive. Total produced, 2,507 production period, July 1943 to October 1944, 15 months. Peak monthly output, 267 units in November 1943. Unit cost $50,750 in 1943. Built by Buick Division, Flint, Michigan. Top speed, 55 mph governed, 60 mph ungoverned acceleration, 0-30 mph in 7 seconds. Range 100 to 15 miles. Power to weight ratio 20-22. 5 horsepower per ton. Ground pressure 10, 5 psi. Combat record 526 confirmed enemy tanks. Destroyed 216 lost to enemy fire. Kill ratio 2, 4 to 1 overall, 2, 3 to 1 in the European theater. For comparison, Panther 44, 8 to 45 tons, 15 horsepower per ton, 34 armed maximum Tiger WE, 57 tons, 100 mm frontal armor, 1347 produced Tiger II 69, 8 tons, 150 mm frontal armor, 492 produced. The ultimate irony of the Hellcat story was that German doctrine created the very conditions for its success. By building larger and heavier tanks, Panthers, Tigers, and King Tigers, Germany created targets that were slow and road-bound, perfect prey for the Hellcat. If Germany had focused on lighter, more mobile vehicles, the Hellcat's advantages might have been reduced. But every additional ton of armor added to German tanks made them more vulnerable to fast American tank destroyers. The pursuit of invincible supertanks produced machines that could not keep pace with high-speed warfare. While Germany built fortresses, America fielded racing cars with guns. The M18 Hellcat proved that battlefield success did not require the strongest or most advanced machine. It required the right machine used in the right way. For German tankers, the result was devastating. Their prized Panthers and Tigers, products of world-class engineering, were repeatedly destroyed by lightly armored American vehicles that seemed almost too fragile to fight. Yet those same fragile vehicles consistently won. Some historians, such as Stephen J. Zaloga, have criticized the M18 as poorly balanced, arguing that its achievements came more from its crews than from the design itself. But this view overlooks the fact that the imbalance, extreme speed traded for armor, was exactly what made its tactics possible. That imbalance was not a flaw, but the reason the Hellcat achieved the highest kill-to-loss ratio of any American armored vehicle in World War II. For German crews in 1944 and 1945, 3 minutes was all they had. 3 minutes from the sound of the Hellcat's roaring engine to the impact of a 76mm round. 3 minutes to turn the turret, aim and fire, while the Hellcat had already moved on at 55 mph, ready to strike again from a new position. Most of the time, those 3 minutes ended with German tanks in flames. The Hellcat proved a simple truth. In modern war, speed can defeat strength. The survivors on the German side carried a hard lesson forward. The best armor is to not be where the enemy can shoot you. The best gun is the one fired from a place the enemy does not expect. And victory comes not from building the strongest tank, but from building the right one for the fight at hand. The M18 Hellcat, under-armored and underestimated, stood out as one of the most effective armored vehicles of the war. For the German crews who faced it, 3 minutes was a lifetime and often the end of a lifetime.